Good afternoon, Seku Radio, Sarasota, Florida, Sarasota, Bradenton. Today we have a great guest. My friend name's Alan Ridley. Alan is, I'm going to read a little bit about Alan. The subject of this part one, we're talking about dyslexia. Dyslexia, according to the dictionary, the learning disability that makes it difficult to read, write, and spell. Alan was born in England, spent the first 2 years of his life sleeping in the hole, in the ground, at the night during the bombing during World War II. Left school when he was 16 because he couldn't read properly and become an apprentice with SKF, learning to be a metallurgist. The company sent him to the university where he got his degree. So, Alan, good afternoon. How are you today?
I'm fine, Seiko, and good to talk to you.
Alan, can you introduce yourself? I know you sent me your resume, but it's so heavy and big. I'd just like you to introduce yourself because you're like a walking library. You have so much to tell us. Just briefly introduce yourself to the Seku Radio listener.
Thank you. Yes, as you say, I was born during the Second World War, and I had the privilege of living next door to a factory that made tanks. So as you can imagine, that was a good target for the Germans to bomb. And it meant at night, if the air raid warnings went off, my mother took me and we went down into an Anderson shelter, which was a hole in the ground covered by steel, and then the dirt from the hole was put onto the steel. That's where I slept. Anyhow, I had a childhood that was interesting. I grew up with rationing, and I had my friends. We played. But as I got a bit older and they started to introduce things like letters and reading, I was not the brightest kid on the block. When I started writing, I did what is called mirror writing. In other words, I wrote backwards. I started at the right and I wrote the letters backwards to the left. I had a tremendously hard time spelling, and it took me quite a while to learn my ABCs. And of course, it's ABCs and A, B, K, which you need if you want to sound out cat. K, A, T. Anyhow, in the education system in England at that time, you took something called the 11 plus. 11 plus was 3 examinations lasting about an hour and a half. One was general knowledge, one was arithmetic or math, and the other one was English language.
Right.
If you did well enough, you went to what was called at that day and age was grammar school. Now, in the USA, a grammar school is like an elementary school, but a grammar school was like the top portion of the kids in the town. The other ones were secondary modern. If you went to grammar school, it was considered you'd probably go to university.
Oh, wow.
I went to grammar school, and I found math very easy, no problem at all. Couldn't understand why some kids struggled. Science, physics, chemistry, biology, absolutely no trouble. Reading was an absolute nightmare for me. And the worst thing was when I was required to read out loud. And every now and again, the English teacher would go around the class, so-and-so read this, so-and-so read that, and I was dreading for my turn. When my turn came, I had a hard time because the words, I got them mixed up, and I would go start at one end of the sentence and then put another couple of words that came at the end, or I'd miss a line, and it was a nightmare. Now, the rest of my class thought this was hilarious. They would laugh at me. I was made fun of by the teachers. My handwriting was terrible. I couldn't spell to save my life. It was very, very difficult for me to spell. Clearly, I was stupid. I was just a dumb kid that happened to be good at other things, but I was stupid. In our school, which was sort of like high school, but you start when you're 12 and go through to you're 18. The last 2 years was upper sixth and lower sixth. And in those days, we had what is called an assembly every morning, and all the kids, and there was probably about 500 of us, would go in a big hall, and the headmaster would give the news of the day. There would be a prayer said. Somebody would play some classical music on a violin or the organ or whatever, and then somebody had to stand up, one of the upper or lower sixth form, and read a passage from the Bible. I knew I could not do that I would make a lot of mistakes, I would embarrass myself, and I was just terrified. The only solution I had is I left school at 16. I dropped out of school. What to do? I went to the local youth employment exchange, which there was in England at that time. They said, oh, well, there's a position here for a metallurgical apprentice at SKF. SKF makes ball bearings, and very big. They're a Swedish company, and they make roller bearings and ball bearings. I said, what's a metallurgist? And the guy said, I have no idea. Why don't you go down and talk to the guy? Which I did. Mm-hmm. So I went to SKF, thought that was good, and they offered me a job. They sent me to technical school 1 day a week from 9 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night, and half an evening class from 6 till 9. And I managed to get my ordinary national certificate. They then sent me to university where I got a degree. Now, all during this time, I had this problem with reading and understanding.
Right.
If I'm required to tell you a telephone number which is written on a piece of paper, and I'm speaking to you, I will have to point to each number with a pencil as I read it. If I don't, it'll start off 914-1782, and the numbers will get all jumbled up. So the only way I can do it is point to it. Same as if I try to do something with a credit card, read a credit card, for instance. Anyhow, I was, again, maintained a very good situation with respect to scientific and math thing. And I was just, obviously there was something wrong with me. I was watching TV one night, and there was a program about some guy and what he'd achieved. I wasn't paying that much attention, but then they started discussing this problem that he had and that problem that he had. And suddenly I thought, my goodness, that's me. He's describing everything that I've been through. I was 31 years of age at that time, and I had never, ever in my life heard the word dyslexia. Mm-hmm. Dyslexia is not a disease. Dyslexia is, as you described, a problem with reading and some other traits, and it makes people have to act in certain ways. The problem is a dyslexic is very often labeled as dumb, careless, lazy, not trying hard enough. At school, he's very often not behind far enough to consider that there's a major problem because he's doing okay in other subjects. Therefore, it's something wrong with him, but hey, no problem. My tests that I did to get into the grammar school, you see, were in 3 parts. Math, no problem. General knowledge, I knew a lot of stuff. English, that's why I just scraped into it. So one of the reasons, when you asked me to do this, you wanted me to talk about my experience in China, which we will do later on. I'm pleased to do it. But I just wanted, because of the number of people that I understand you reach by this radio program, I want them to understand what dyslexia is. I want them to be able to go on the internet to look it up and also get some help, because very often either you, the person that has it, doesn't really understand what's going on, or even worse, one of your kids don't know what to do with him. He's just something wrong with him, but he's just not trying. He's just not very bright. He's just lazy. Get him checked out for dyslexia. It is not something like a black and white thing. You don't either have it or you don't have it. You can have a slight amount of dyslexia and you can have severe dyslexia. So again, it's not something that the average teacher or even the general practitioner doctors will sort of immediately know what's up. But it's certainly something, if you or one of your children have this problem, it's certainly worth mentioning the word to somebody that knows how to diagnose it. Now, I went through my career, as I say, I left school when I was 16. I have lived and worked in England, Belgium, Canada. I emigrated to the USA in 1974. I became a citizen in 1979. In 1997, I moved with my wife to China, where I stayed until I retired in 2010. So I've had wide experience in many cultures throughout the world, and I have learned how to handle my problems. Right. One of the biggest things that helped me tremendously was in the early 80s I purchased an Apple II